Welcome to Terraverse TV. I'm John Alterelli. I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about Elon Musk's interview with Donald Trump on Twitter. It was quite interesting. I watched the entire thing, and then I watched the news media coverage of it, and I was shocked, surprise, surprise, that nothing that they said had any sort of relevance or basis in sort of reality as to what I saw. And it was amazing, and I'm going to put up a little chart later on about some of the various news media's responses, which were unreal, to say the least. So as you know, my goal here is to try to bring the facts as best I can. I laid out my biases. I try to be clear about where I come from. But even with those biases, I'm going to do my best just to stick to the facts. Sometimes, though, when I see such, such amazing sort of disingenuousness on the part of the media or people on the left or the right, I have no choice but to call it out. And sometimes I can get a little emotional about it, so I apologize in advance if I end up going into a rant. Sometimes I can't help myself, but I'll do my best. So if you like the content, please subscribe, share it, hit the like button, and hit the bell if you want to be noticed for new ones. And please, comments are always welcome. Again, the only thing I ask, and people have been very good about this, please be civil in the discourse. I will try not to do anything that's uncivil or incivil. Not sure about that one. We'll have to have my fact checker check my grammar on that one. But nevertheless, I want to be polite in doing this is something that we can bring ourselves together, not to divide. You know, most of us share the same values, and I want to bring that back, shared values rather than what separates us or our opinions that are different. That doesn't mean we have to hate each other. So let's get to it. Jay, can you put up that chart that I sent to you with all the media responses? Okay, I don't know if you can see this. Hopefully you can zoom in on it. But there's about, 30 or so news media responses. Every single one of them, except for, I don't know if Fox News is on there, characterize this debate as some crazy debacle, some horrible, lie fest. They denigrated Elon Musk. They denigrated Donald Trump. Everything that was said was a lie. It was so far over the top, the response, that I'm saying, did they watch the same thing that I watched? And I don't get it. And so then the New York Times put out a list of his inaccuracy, which I'm going to go over some of them. I'm going to cover a few of them because it's just interesting how they characterize it. And then somebody else did another one with even more of these. So if you can go online, you can find all these, list of supposed lies. And but I want to start with my take before I get into the lies that people are claiming. So first of all, there was a 40-minute delay because there was a distributed denial of service attack on Twitter. Okay, so before it even started, someone, either a state actor or a concerted, very good hacker, inside of the U.S., decided they didn't want this interview to be brought to the public. And if they can attack Elon Musk and Twitter, think about how the rest of us are so at risk to ever get anything truthful to us, because if they can shut him down, they can shut everybody down. And that was pretty terrifying to me. And rather than admit that, all of these stations were sort of, they had technical difficulties. Elon Musk can't even put the Twitter thing up. It's ridiculous to say that. I mean, it was an attack, clearly an attack. And the fact that he was able to correct it in 40 minutes just goes to show you how good and powerful and smart Elon Musk and his team is, because sometimes those things put people out of business for days. Okay, I work with this stuff. This is one of the things. I have a cybersecurity company. That's one of the things that we try to protect our clients against. It's bad news, okay? And it can be really devastating. So the fact that he overcame it, got it back up, that's a good testament. But the fact that that the news media tried to make it look like he was a fool and it was all just, their inability, they could get it online, whatever. Then the other thing they all said was they said that Donald Trump was talking with a lisp. He sounded like he was drunk, or he was, he was running into the Joe Biden syndrome. That, again, was a technical difficulty, because if you took the time, or other people have now done that, they had a feed from where Trump was, because Trump was remote. He wasn't with Musk. And when you can listen to the tape where he was being recorded directly in the room that he was in, And I think he was even talking on a phone or something. It was like really not the smartest thing. I don't know why they didn't have better connection. But then the connection that was coming through on the Twitter feed, it was a little bit garbled, and it had nothing to do with what Trump was saying. He was clear as a bell in actuality, but of course it came off as a little bit garbled, and it sounded like maybe he had a lisp or whatever. And it's funny because they knew that when they said that. There's no way that they didn't know what happened, because I'm sure if they were journalists, they would have called Elon Musk and asked him what happened, and he would have explained to him where the difficulty was, and they would have been fine. That's what journalists are supposed to do before they print their baloney lies. They should have checked the facts, and they didn't even bother because they didn't care. And even if they knew the facts, they weren't going to tell the truth, because they want to have a narrative that now Trump is as out to lunch as Biden was, and that's just not the case. If you watch that interview, not only was he very clear and he had a tremendous ability to recall facts, names, and the like, he did it very well. And I'm not sure I could have remembered all of the names of all of the people, and I'm going to get into that he was able to just rattle off the top of his head. So he may not be a nice guy, he may talk a bunch of baloney, but at the end of the day, to suggest that he's having sort of mental problems, then you know what? That's just, you just want to say that, okay? And this is the same people that were saying that Joe Biden did not. So those people, you have zero credibility in my book, because if you can't tell the difference between Trump and Biden's faculties at this point, then you're just lying. You're lying to everyone. And you've lied already, because you've already said that Joe Biden was fine, and now you're saying he's out to lunch. So that's not the problem with Trump, by the way. Okay, there's a lot of other problems with Trump, and I'll get into some, but it isn't that he can't, he's mentally deficient at this point. You may think he's mentally deranged, you may not like him, whatever, but he certainly has, his brain is working, and it's working very well. Okay, now let's get into sort of just some overall topics, and then I'll get into some of the these fact checks that the New York Times did. I watched this interview, and the first, I would say maybe 40% of it, okay, they talked about the assassination attempt. And Trump went through it a great detail again with Elon Musk. And I would have expected, given all of that I know now and all the analysis that's come out, that Trump would have been very, very, very harsh on the Secret Service, and potentially, gone down the path of a left wing, a lefty conspiracy theory, which a lot of people are doing. He did not do that. In fact, he was unbelievably generous and complimentary of the Secret Service people all around him, including the women that got bashed because they were hiding out and they were acting like they were scared, they couldn't put their guns away. And even I had an issue with that. Trump thanked them. And he knew their names. Think about that. He found out who was on his detail, knew their names, thanked them, said they did a spectacular job. He was so thankful for that. And that is the appropriate response. He did not bash them. He did not bash the local police. He didn't bash anyone. And he talked to all of them. He talked to the families of the victims, the guy that died and the other two victims. He is in contact, and he did what a real president should do. Was he didn't sit around, hide in the basement, didn't not go talk to these people. He's been in constant contact, helping him raise money. He got to know the names of all the people involved, and that's pretty good. I'm not that great with names. I could never have done what he did. He knew all their names, and he said them, so go back and look. And he did not bash them. All he said was there was a failure of the of the communication in the process. He was incredibly generous. He could have taken a much harder stance, which I will, and many other people have analyzed it. I think it was more than just a failure. It was a ridiculous, cataclysmic, failure, so many ways, and not just the Secret Service. I have issue with the cop that went up on the roof, jumped down, ran away to his, if you look at that film, it's like ridiculous. He ran away. He ran away like he was afraid. And then when the shooting started, he ran back to his car to try to get his AR-15 out. He couldn't even load the thing. And he was terrified. Terrified. That guy should not be a cop. Or at least he shouldn't be on that. He should be a patrol cop, doing traffic. You can't give a guy like that a weapon. All right? You can't give a guy like that a weapon. You can't put him in a position where he's supposed to either take the bullet or deliver the bullet, and he runs away. Terrible. And it wasn't only that. I don't know if you saw the other film where the guys were trying to knock the fence down with a car. There was a bunch of cops and Secret Service and some other, people there, all geared up like they're going to war. I mean, cops like to wear the same stuff that the military wears now, which is baloney. Okay, they're not in the war. Okay, you ought to see the stuff that these cops wear. They got all military garb. They got full armor, plates, knives. I mean, what are they going to do with a knife? Are you going to get a hand-to-hand combat? It's ridiculous the amount of gear that these cops are carrying. And then on top of that, these guys are totally out of shape. You got a 300-pound cop there. Where's he going? What happened to these police forces? You'd be thrown out of the military if you got overweight. It's just unbelievable. You can't put people like that in charge of dealing with protecting the president where they couldn't possibly even climb up on that roof. That kid climbed up there, and they couldn't get a cop to even get up there, okay? It's unbelievable. That's terrible. And so when I watched those guys behind the fence, when they were knocking the fence down with a car, they couldn't even it's ridiculous. The cops couldn't even get into the fence. They had it locked. They didn't even know what they were doing. They're knocking it down with a car. And while they're doing that, all the cops are hunkering down. And there was this one guy, he was jacked. Most of them were fat, but there was one guy, he's jacked up, and he's like hiding the worst. And I'm saying, what? Get out of the service, get out of the cops, retire. If you can't do your job better than that, quit. I'm tired of seeing people who are afraid and they're not qualified. The same reason why they sometimes shoot people in situations where the cops are so afraid that they can't deal with it. Get out. You ought to come to New York. You want to see some real cops. We got some great cops here in New York, and they are tough, and they deal with this stuff every single day, and most of them do a fantastic job. We have our problems from time to time, but let me tell you something. I'd rather be in New York City, protected by the New York City police, than even the Secret Service. And by the way, when the president comes to Manhattan, how do you even protect someone? There's 1 million windows where somebody could have a sniper in it, right? 1 million. And yet, the president's never been attacked in New York City. The New York City Police Department, the finest in the world, protects him with the help of the Secret Service. But you think the Secret Service could cover the whole city? No, they don't. It's mostly done by NYPD, the finest, and FDNY, the bravest. And we're lucky to have them in New York. I like to put a plug in for them because I love those guys. They're the best. And this never would have happened in New York. Never. Mark my words, never. All right. So I'm going to leave those cops alone. I feel bad, but you know what? Frankly, all of them, not only should I don't want them to get fired. They should just retire. Just quit, okay? Just own up to the fact that you don't belong in that job and quit. And if they won't quit, then you should fire some of them. Somebody has got to be fired for this. Somebody. All right? Because at the end of the day, you can't have that going on around the president or any candidate that's running for office. It's just sad. It makes us look like idiots around the world. We can't even cover like the easiest building in the place there. So let me get off that rant. I'm very upset about that. But I wanted to say, and I wanted to give Donald Trump some props here. He never gets any from anyone, not even from me, because I frankly not particularly fond of him. But when he does something right, I want to encourage him to do more of that. I want him to say the right things. I want him to treat people correctly. I want him to acknowledge the things that he needs to acknowledge. I want him to be more of a presidential-like person. And I'm going to get more into that when we get into these details about these facts. So most of the first part of the interview, and it was a long part, I was thinking like 40 minutes maybe, was all on that. And I said, okay, how is anybody going to have a problem with that? He didn't say anything wrong. Nothing. Then he got into where we were starting to get the policies, and he started to talk about various things. And that's where things sort of went a little bit off the rails. And I'm just going to give you my general perception. He said a lot of right things, a lot of things I agree with in terms of the kinds of policies we need to have about the border, about the economy, about a lot of things, okay? I share those views in terms of policy. But Trump can't help himself, okay? He's such a narcissistic egomaniac that he has to overstate everything, okay? The facts alone are fine. Why embellish? Now, I get it. That's what politicians do on both sides, and some of them just flat out lie, and I think Trump does it as well. But he more so, in this particular set of interviews, there were some, I think, absolute falsehoods, or not just falsehoods, things that he couldn't substantiate. So I can't say whether they're false or not, but I don't know where he got this data, and I can't find it myself to verify it. But most of what he did, he had a great policy point. I'll talk about the border. He had a great policy point on inflation. And all he had to do was state the facts as they exist because they are good for him and very bad for the Democrats. And just stick with the facts. And he instead embellished, which then made the so-called fact checkers say they were all lies. Well, they were not lies. They were exaggerations, okay? But the underlying fact is bad enough, and I'm going to go and try to correct some of those with some of the real facts and show why he should have done that. He would have been better off, and he could have shut down this, crazy, mainstream media attack on him because, it's easy. When you make a misstatement, you're off a little bit, whatever, it's easy to just call it a lie. So let me cover a few of these because they were sort of ridiculous. And first, I'll start with the size of rallies. Now, both sides are claiming AI. They didn't have big rallies. They didn't have small rallies. How many people were there? As we all know, Trump loves the size of rally thing. I don't know what the deal is with that because it doesn't really mean that much. It doesn't really mean that much. I know he loves the fanfare. He loves to make believe he's talking to football stadiums full of people every time he goes out, and sometimes he does. And by the way, the first few things I think that Kamala did, she had pretty good size gathering. Because they were all excited. They finally had a candidate, and they were the Democrats are very, very excited about that, and that's good. And the people come out, that's good. She's also had some trouble because she's also got, the very, very progressive wing of the party is like also attacking her at their own rally. I don't understand that because if you want her to win, you got to go with her because you don't want Trump. I mean, you ought to just, support Kamala, whether or not, she's fully, on board with the Hamas, Israel debate. But anyway, I thought that was a strange thing that the Democrats, they can't even help it. They're going to fight themselves. But anyway, let's go over a few of these facts. So the size of the rallies, they both bullshit about that, and I don't care, and it's irrelevant. Who cares? It's who comes out and votes is going to matter. And I know that there's some maybe correlationship between, engagement and how many people are at rallies and, and what polls say. So they lie about the polls right up until the election day. And because you're trying to get people to vote. I mean, it seems to me the only reason why you do any of this stuff is to make sure that you get your base out to vote, okay? What you really want to do is get people to vote, not get complacent that you're leading too high or not coming out because you think you're going to lose. So I get the arguments. I know why they do it, and so I don't care. So go ahead and, chit-chat about and overstate or understate your rallies. You go on all day. If you want to waste the time of the news media for that, that's not a policy issue, okay? To me, I would waste no time on that at all if I was in the media. And then this, misleadingly describe Kamala as the border czar. This one I don't get at all, okay? I read, and there's, you can go online, watch what Biden said at that conference where he appointed her as responsible for addressing the root causes and being responsible for the border and all that. Did he call her a czar? No, he didn't. But everybody did the day after. Every single news media, and you can go online, you can pull them up. Somebody did a whole montage of all of the media outlets. They all called her the border czar. Okay, she was fine with being known as the border czar. They loved the fact that she was the border czar. I don't even like that term because I don't even know what it means. It's not an official title. They use it for the drug czar. This has just become part of the vernacular that we like to use when we say someone is in charge. That's their mission, and usually it's given to a vice president or somebody who's not the president who wants to dump off a crappy issue that they don't want to be responsible for. Let the vice president be responsible for it, or the first lady. A lot of the drug czar things were, I remember, I think Reagan's wife, and I think, a couple other people were like, ahead of these sort of, anti-drug campaigns and stuff like that. And then there was one, for education and the like. So they're all fine. They use the term czar. It doesn't mean anything, but clearly, whatever it means to be in charge, or you had the responsibility, or that was supposed to be your gig, right? Because they didn't give her any other gigs. What else was she appointed to? Well, what did she do for the last 3.5 years? I don't know. I haven't heard anything else. So I assume that was her deal. And by the way, that's a big deal. I would have loved if she actually did something because that was one of the biggest issues that we've been facing. And I'll get into that in a little bit over some of these other misstated facts. So that is something I wish, that they would cut it out. That's a joke. I mean, to say that she wasn't the border czar is just wrong. Now let's get to the immigration issue, the size of it, Trump apparently said 20 million people crossed the border. Now, if anyone knows or watches some of my content, I had a very, very senior immigration expert, worked for the government, does private practice now, works for a lot of not-for-profits. By the way, was the lawyer who got these Afghan special forces women out of Afghanistan. We left them behind, by the way. Their families were killed. They were killed. That withdrawal was just an absolute disaster. We left behind people that we used to fight the war and just, abandon them, okay? So she worked on that. She got them out, and it's been a great outcome for them. And, if you want to see the documentary is called Guerrera, and if you want to see that, we'll try to put a link down in the comment section. Anyway, I brought her on, and we did a whole session on immigration. She explained all the different programs. We went through the entire history of it, and I have the data, okay? I've done the work on this thing. And she estimated, and I think there's been other estimates out there, 14 million. I've seen estimates as low as 10. I've seen them as high as 20. She said 14. I think that is sort of the number that people are circling around as best they can. This is from the government side. This is not private. This is not news media. She was in the government. She was tracking this stuff. She was at Homeland. But that's all that they know about. So they know that number's understated because there was a lot of catch and release. There was a lot of other issues where people came across, but they don't catch everyone that comes across. And so they actually don't know. The government does not know today how many people have come in. They just don't. So it could be 10, 14, 20. Who cares? 10 is terrible, 14 is worse, and 20 is even worse, okay? It's not the difference between 1 million and 20 million. And here's why. Since the 1990s, so 90s, every decade, the 90s, 2000, 2010, all the way up to the 2020 era, for the last 30 or 40 years, we have had, on average, approximately 1 million illegal immigrants a year. So if you're talking about 10 million, let's go with the lowest estimate, that's a decade worth of illegal immigrants coming across the border. How in the world are we going to process a decade's worth when they were having a hard enough time dealing with immigration when it was come at 1 million? And by the way, on top of the 1 million that were coming in without documents, there was 1 million of legal immigration. So they were dealing with 2 million a year. It's a lot of processing, okay? It's a lot of people to deal with. And that population, every year that grows, they don't become citizens, overnight. So the undocumented citizenship just keeps growing. And it grew to probably around 10 million, I think, before this, and now it's practically double. So he may have meant 20 million now we have in total, or, but I think he said coming across during Biden's term. So I'll give the New York Times the benefit of the doubt that they got that right, that he overstated it. But it may not be, okay? It may not be. They don't know. They can't give me a number. So New York Times, I'm going to call you out. Give me the number. And where did you get it? Is it accurate? Is it an estimate? Okay? Forget about that. 10 million, 14 million, disaster. Okay? And the people that work in the government who have to deal with this stuff, that are not the politicians, but the on-the-ground people at Homeland and all these other places, and the Immigration Department, they're dying. They're dying trying to process this stuff. And then on top of that, you've got these poor immigrants who've come here thinking they're going to get the chance of a lifetime, spent their entire savings, probably borrowed money from their families, the whole network in their town, got trafficked across by these traffickers, paid an enormous amount of money, are probably now in indentured servitude to some of these people, they're being victimized here by gangs and traffickers. They don't have enough resources, even though we're spending billions on them. And I'll tell you, because I'm sorry I'm getting a little bit, I told, Jenna, sorry, Jenna, you're supposed to calm me down. I try not to get upset, but this is so bad, and I feel so bad. So last night I went to CVS. I had to get a birthday card for someone, and I went to CVS, and there was these 2 young kids in there, and I could tell that they were immigrants, and they were asking for $1 to get a bottle of water. Okay. And I said, "Oh man, this is horrible. These poor kids are here; they can't even get a bottle of water." And I said to him, "I said, wait there. I'll come back." I had to go upstairs to get the card, and he was on the bottom floor. And the guard was kind of like trying to push him out. But I told the guys, "Look, just let him wait here. I'm gonna get him a bottle of water." So I went upstairs, got my card, came back down, and I couldn't give the kid $1 because you can't even get. We'll get to inflation later. You can't get a bottle of water for $1 at CVS. I don't know if you've ever been there recently, but you can't. So I told him to go get a bottle of water, and the kid had a bottle of water. So, he had his probably his younger brother or a friend there, and he didn't have one. I says, well, get him one too. You're going to share one bottle, get him a bottle. And I said, by the way, go get a snack or something to eat too. Because I couldn't tell whether these kids are eating or not. So I said, go get a snack or something, whatever you want. Get your water, get something, come up to the counter. Because I didn't want to give them the money because I didn't want them to feel like they're begging, and I didn't want to get them into that mode. Because people in New York, they hate that, right? They don't want to be always, having panhandlers out there asking for money. So I always try to either give food. I have a guy on my street. He's my local homeless guy. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He loves it there. I guess he's definitely got some mental issues. He doesn't bother anyone. So every time I see him, I usually give him a little money every now and then. I always give him any food that I have that I'm not, if I'm coming from a restaurant, I always take home the I don't want to call it doggy, but the extra food that I don't eat, I always give it to him. He's very appreciative. And by the way, everybody in the neighborhood kind of does. He's kind of our guy because he doesn't bother anyone. He doesn't bother anyone. And he's got nowhere to go. And, so people in the neighborhood have come to treat him well, which is different than down the street where we've got people shooting up drugs. They're laying around the streets naked. It's just horrific. I mean, New York is a bad place. If you come here, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's really bad. And that is not the immigration population. That's just the regular homeless people we have here that have been a disaster since COVID, when the city shut down and we pulled the police force back off of the streets, and now it's just like a jungle out there. It's not as bad as San Francisco, but it's not good. Not for New York. New York always used to do better. So I got the kids like water. I got them a couple snacks, and I said to them, I said, okay, guys, now make sure do the right thing. Be nice to people. If you need help, ask for help. But don't do anything stupid. Don't get yourself in trouble. And they were very nice, very polite, and they thanked me, and they went about their business. And I felt really good, and I felt bad and good at the same time, okay? But that's what's going on with this immigration. We got people out there with no money, no support, even though the government's giving some kind of crazy, terrible housing, even though they might say they're in hotels, whatever. I know some of the other places in New York, they're like warehouses that were toxic waste dumps. Some of the stuff that's going on here is unbelievable. And people are making money off it. That's the problem, right? They're doing contracts with these slumlords and these hotels and these literally toxic waste dump warehouse that was, that the owner was under indictment. And then they took a not-for-profit to go in there and take it over so they can pay them. And what they're doing to these people is just horrific. And they don't have jobs, so they're going to do crime. It's the way it is. I mean, what are you going to do? You got to survive. You got to put your family on this, out there. And this isn't crime like shoplifting because people are protesting. This is to survive, okay? So it's not good. We have them here, and as I said in my other immigration one, we got to deal with that. And I don't know how we're going to deal with 10, 14, 20 million because that's a 10 years worth of immigration that we have never been able to deal with in the past. I don't know how we're going to deal with it. This issue alone could be a real problem for the government and for our country. And I don't think people have realized the magnitude of it yet because it hasn't all sunk in and you haven't seen it. If you're not in a city that has a high concentration of the people that have come across the border, you're not seeing the direct impact of that. But I got to tell you, it's bad, and it's also hurting low-income people in these neighborhoods who also need help, who are now not getting the help, and it's creating a divide, right, between our existing people that are struggling in poverty and the new immigrations. And instead of helping, there's going to be a conflict. And it could get bad. And there's gangs coming in. And Trump said a lot of stuff that people are saying, oh, it's not true. It is true. They found out in New York that there were gangs were trafficking weapons through food boxes, and they admitted it. They caught the guys. It has definitely happened. So let's stop the baloney that there's no crime been happening. Is it 90%? No, but you don't need 90%. You get a bunch of gang guys in here, and they're bringing in weapons in the food boxes that the government's providing. You got a problem. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We don't even know. And they always do bring up all the killings and all that. And I get that. It's terrible. But I don't put that on all of the people that are here. I put that on the bad people that came over. And yes, they sent criminals here. Yes, there's probably terrorists that have come across. By definition, you have to. You open a border, people see the opportunity, you're going to take advantage of it. And they're doing it. Okay, so there's a problem. And it's going to take a long time to get there. So here's the next one. Trump said, now I'm just going to segue into it. Trump said, with no evidence that other countries are taking unauthorized immigrants out of jails and prisons and bringing them to the United States. Some of that's true. The extent of it, like he said that, I guess Venezuela dumped their entire prison population. That's not true. They're clearly finding people here that are committing crimes that they were in jail or they were criminals in other countries for sure. The numbers are not there yet. We're getting it. Like I said, I'm working with my friend who's the immigration expert. She's trying to get numbers. We're all trying to get data so we can have some real discussions around what the numbers are. But anecdotally, it doesn't look good, okay? And when you have your kid killed or you have someone that's stabbed or whatever, you're going to be upset about that, and I don't blame you, okay? Because it's a failure of the government across the board. So I don't really care what the number is of coming out of jails or whatever. It's bad. It's bad enough. And we shouldn't denigrate or try to call that a lie, because Trump tends to, as he always does, and unfortunately when he went off the rails towards the end, not off the rails, but when he started to get into this stuff, he embellished everything. No question. He can't help himself. And he can't help himself to take all the credit for everything. He's the greatest, everybody else is no good. And he takes personal attacks at people, which I don't like. And none of that helps him, in my view, although people think that he plays to the base. I'm a voter. I'm a moderate. I'm a Republican, right? I would love to vote for someone on the Republican side that follows the policies of the party and is a good person. But we have Trump, and it's troubling for guys like me because I don't know what to do about it. At the same time, I'm not sure I can vote for someone like Kamala or Waltz, until I get to the bottom of their records. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't like the fact that our parties, both parties, have turned into a bunch of kindergarten, name calling. Politicians. It's tragic, and it looks bad around the world. We've become, a banana republic. It's really sad. And the notion about the dictator, forget about the dictator. It's just abysmal, the level of discourse, and it's just tragic. It is, and I hope that they wake up and stop doing it, and I hope the media stops doing what they're doing because they amplify it, and the way they talk, okay, the way they're so full of it. And they're so ridiculously over the top. That's not news coverage. You should. Matter of fact, they all should be charged with election campaign violations for giving free election campaigning for a candidate. I think they crossed the line on that stuff. So anyway, that's another thing. So let's get off. Then he said, okay, this was another one, which is really ridiculous. He said that Biden shut down the Keystone XL pipeline. And he said because it was going to employ 48,000 people. I don't know what they were going to employ. Probably a lot of it was construction. I don't think it was going to be permanent employment because once the pipeline's running, you got some maintenance. I don't know what's 40,000, whatever. So they call that a lie, but Biden did shut it down. So at least they admit it. He certainly did shut the pipeline down. And it wasn't about the number of jobs that was important. It was about our energy security. That pipeline was supposed to bring us energy security. It wasn't just about jobs. And they were saying, well, it only had a projected employment of 35 permanent jobs. Well, what does that mean? 50,000 were going to work on the pipeline for 5 years or 10 years and then only 35 left? That doesn't help me. Calling that a lie doesn't change the fact that he shut down the pipeline. And that pipeline had a lot of value. You can be an environmentalist and say that's not good. But remember, until we get fully off of fossil fuels, which may never happen, until we go into these clean energies, which I'm all in favor of, we need that energy, and we need it low cost, and we don't want to be beholden to other countries because we've seen what's happened in the past when we had to do that, and we had to empty our strategic reserves. They've made more mistakes on that than anything I've ever seen, and it's not really that complicated. And frankly, it's all because this fake pandering to the environmentalists when it's really not, and they really need to do the right thing. Keep our energy secure until we can get these other renewables resources. I think solar at the end of the day should be the one, although there's a lot of problems, and we can talk about that some other time, about the solar panels. They only last 20 years. Those in themselves create a massive environmental problem, which people don't account for. The fact that right now, without solar, if you just have electric cars and all the electricity, it's actually more environmentally damaging because 35% of our electricity comes from coal. I can go on and on about the sort of duplicity and the hypocrisy of the arguments. And if you really care about the environment, you should be honest about it and know what is happening and know what is a proper way to phase out fossil fuels for renewables and what that timeline should look like and how it's impacting, and stop just saying, oh, get rid of oil. Go ahead, get rid of oil. Do it tomorrow. This will be shut off. We won't have power. You won't be out there listening to this stuff. We'll be cooking in the backyard on a fireplace, on an outdoor fire. So stop talking nonsense about shutting it all down overnight. It's not going to happen. And anyone that says that, really shouldn't be taken seriously. And I don't care how much I get attacked for this, but because you're a child, if you think that. And like I said, I'm all for it. Guess what? Shut your power off tomorrow. Go for it. I'm happy. You do it. Prove it. Show me you're going to be the first one that's going to shut the power off. Do it. And you know what? Not one person will take me up on that. Okay? So cut it out. Stop talking the talk. If you can't, walk the walk. All right? That's the next one. I'm going to keep going to the next one. Then climate change. This one was really killer, right? Trump made a ridiculous statement about, the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. Okay, we know it's rising more than that. Whether it's going to go up, down, I can't tell you because these models that they've been putting out there have never been accurate, and I don't have a lot of faith in it because the science has become politicized. It's no longer science. It's a political argument, and I get it. I definitely believe in climate change. Climate's always changing. It'll change forever. We don't have a lot of control over the earth. We don't know who and what and where. We can't model this stuff correctly. And the fact is people lie about the data that's coming out because if it doesn't fit the narrative, they revise it. The numbers revised all the time. I've done enough research to know that I don't trust them, okay? I have an inkling that we have an issue. I have an inkling that it will always have an issue. I'm not sure how to fix it yet. I wish they would be honest about it. I wish we could sit down and have a good conversation about it. I wish our best scientists would actually help us, but that's not what's happening. So the net is he was not talking about climate change. He was talking about nuclear war. He was saying nuclear war is a far bigger risk today than the ocean rising. And you know what? He's right. Everyone I know in the community, in the military community and all that, and these are not warmongers. These are guys that are going to get killed if we go to war, who don't want to go to war. They believe we're at the highest level of risks since I was a kid in the 60s when we used to have bomb shelters, nuclear bomb shelters. People don't know what it was like back then when we were in a full-blown Cold War. We used to have to go in the basement of the school or the church. We had fire drills and all the time because it was a real threat. We had the doomsday clock and all that stuff. People in the last 20, 30 years have lived so luckily without that threat over their head. They don't have a clue how nice it is not to be worried about, the end of the world every day, like when I was growing up. And now it's come back and it's kind of crept back without a lot of thought. Because we now have places that have nuclear weapons that we don't want. Pakistan, I think you have Iran. Maybe they don't, but maybe they do. You got North Korea, you got Russia, China. These are not places that are friendly to us, and they have a ton of weapons and nuclear weapons. And if we get into a conflict that's big enough, by the way, Russia's threatened to use them. Korea threatens to use them all the time. If they have a rocket that could deliver it, they would have done it already, probably. And I don't know where Iran is. They were very close to having the ability to enrich the uranium to the point where they could have a weapon as well. They may already have because we had a program to shut it down. And as you know, I don't know which president did it. It was Obama or was it Biden? But they reneged on that deal, and they gave them the money that we were holding back, and they went right back into producing. We can't get in there to inspect. It's a joke. And by the way, everyone that knew what they were talking about predicted what was going to happen, and it happened like within days. Okay, as soon as they got their money, they told you to get out, and you're not going to come inspect our stuff, and we're going to go right back to doing what we were doing. So great job on that one. So they were talking about, both Elon Musk was talking about nuclear energy being safer than any other energy in the world at this point. And Trump was talking about nuclear war being more of an issue than climate change. And how that got convoluted into the fact that he made a misstatement about, not just a misstatement, a ridiculous overstatement. He had no basis to claim that the sea level was only going to rise, what did he say, an eighth of an inch over 400 years, and he made some snarky little joke about that's going to get him, more waterfront property. I mean, that's Trump, okay? And I'm not apologizing for him. I think it's a stupid thing to say. Absolutely stupid. And it's ridiculous because he took away from the real message, which was nuclear war today is a larger risk than pretty much all the other things that we worry about that are potentially not even an issue, but even if they are an issue, they're not as imminent as this nuclear threat that we have today. Now, you may not want to believe that, and that's fine. You can go about and live your put your head in the sand if you want to, but I have pretty credible sources in the government who are extremely concerned about this, and I think there is some merit to that. So I hope it doesn't happen. I don't want to see the end of the world. I don't want to see it either while I'm alive or while my kids are alive. So I hope that we can get our arms around it and get our stuff under control. That was the next one. What's the next one? Oh, yeah, inflation. This is a big one, right? So he claimed apparently that grocery prices have gone up 50, 60, even 100% in some cases. That could very well be true if you go and pick certain items off of the shelf and you can look at the prices. So some of the stuff has gone up, ridiculously. I saw somebody with a bell pepper went, up three times the price or double the price. There is no doubt, and anyone that wants to claim this is absolutely lying, that inflation, particularly for food prices, is off the chart. It's some of the worst in decades. Okay, probably since, again, because most people, I don't want to say most people, but I'm of the boomer age. I grew up in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, and we had horrific inflation under President Carter, who I voted for. I was a Democrat back then. I believed he was such a nice guy. I thought he was going to be great for us. He was terrible. He ruined the military. He was terrible on the economy. He was a smart guy and a sweet guy, and I love that guy. Okay, as a person. I don't like Trump as a person, but it's not just about what you care about the person. You got to have somebody in that seat that can do the job. And poor, Carter was terrible at it. Even though he was wealthy, by the way. Let's say he tried to play the old peanut farmer, but he was a peanut plantation owner. Okay, he had a lot of wealth in his family, but he didn't act like he was wealthy. He lived in a modest house. He did, habitat, building houses for people until he was like almost 90-something. I mean, this guy was the real deal, okay? And I love him for that. He was the real deal, nice guy, but he was terrible on the economy, and he decimated the military after the Vietnam War. It was impossible to be in the military. I was in the military. It was terrible. He got rid of the GI Bill. We didn't get any educational benefits. The VI was gutted. It was horrible. Horrible time to be in the military. I think, other than wartime, it was the worst time to be in the military because people hated us. And then when Reagan came in, he turned it all around. I see this inflection point now, very similar to what happened in the 80s with Reagan, where people hated the country. We had massive riots in the 70s, just like we're having now. They were actually worse, okay? We had high inflation, we had high unemployment. We had what they call stagflation, so it was terrible. The economy wasn't growing. Prices were high. I bought my first house. I paid 18% interest, and they went up to 21%. It was the same as a credit card. So, and then I hear people say, "Oh, we couldn't buy a house." Believe me, folks, it was way worse. You can pay 8% or 7 or 8% for a mortgage, which for most of my life that was a good rate. It only got down below 7-8% in the last 20 years. But for the first 30 years that I was in the housing market, I was always paying 8, 10, 12%. That was routine. So we had it really, really good for a long time. And then COVID hit. The government made the worst possible decisions they ever did in the history of this country, in my view, other than things like slavery. I mean, we've had some bad calls in the past. But what happened in COVID, the way they shut the economy down without any data, I get it, people are scared, but when the data was starting coming out, they should have reopened it faster. They should have done a lot better. And the fact that they let big box stores stay open and shut down mom and pops, there was no rational behavior around who stayed open, who closed, who did this, who did that. And it was a disaster. And people have still not recovered. My son was in that cohort where his senior year of high school, he missed his senior prom, his senior graduation, and he did his first year of college remotely, even though I had to pay for his dorm. Because otherwise they were, they were going to shut, he couldn't be there. So think about that. 3 of the best years of your life, my son missed them. Or 3 of the biggest things of his life: high school graduation, senior prom, and his first year of college. What should have been the greatest experience ever, gone. For no really, now that we know, no really good reason. So then the the pumping 14 trillion, whatever they did into the economy. By the way, Trump has to take some responsibility for that because I think some of that came under his last year in there. He caved to the pressure, because they were using the COVID, debacle to get rid of Trump. It became the clarion call for why Trump has to go. But he just caved in some respects to the whole thing. Even though he started out strong, I wish he had stayed strong because he would have been right. He would have been right if he had stuck to his guns, and he didn't. He went that way, put a lot of money into the economy, the PPP program and all these other ones. The money was all stolen. They don't even know where it is. They don't even talk about it anymore because they don't know where it is. They don't know who got it, where it went. Even politicians in Congress took the money. Okay, I was entitled to take a PPP loan. Okay, I'm a lawyer. I have my own business. I still worked. I paid my employees, okay? I didn't take it because why should I? I was fine. I was working, okay? I could work remotely. My employees could work remotely. It wouldn't be fair to take that money. And I didn't. But big law firms and other firms, I couldn't believe it. They took that money. It was a scandal. And to this day, I wish they would do a reaccounting of that and do a full investigation to see who took it and whether they should have took it or not. And then there was a lot of other programs that are even worse. And that's, again, a big black mark on our country. And so what happens when you throw that kind of money into the economy? Well, there isn't even the farthest left economist, and believe me, there's plenty of them, okay? Even they know when you increase the money supply, when you borrow and you put all that money in there, only one thing can happen: inflation. We have enough data over enough period of time to know that. And it was predicted when it was happening. People were told, and the government was told, and they didn't just slow it down. They doubled down. And they came up with every reason to put more money out there, calling it infrastructure. And I can't wait to see what the infrastructure, you know how many infrastructure bills I've seen in my lifetime? More than I can count. And I got to tell you what, we still have some of the worst infrastructure in the world. You go overseas, you go to China, go to Hong Kong, it's Singapore. We are the worst, okay? And we spend more money than anyone. And where does it go? Well, we know where it goes. It goes to people that are pals of these politicians who get these contracts and never do anything. I love to see the memes and stuff where you said there's a sign up there saying, one worker, 10 supervisors, on a site. Every time you go watch people filling the potholes, right? There's 12 guys standing on a shovel and a broom, and there's one guy maybe working every hour. I get it. It's a full employment act for buddies of our politicians. I get it. And that's what we have here. So we're dealing with these infrastructure bills they call them infrastructure. Every bill that has a name on it, whatever they call the name, it is not what it is. Please read these bills. Please see what they spend the money on. It is nothing like that. Even the border bill that they were calling to shut down the border, it wasn't putting money to the border. They were sending money to Ukraine. It's a joke. They're all about money. There was nothing to do in that bill that was actually going to do anything at the border. Read it. I read it, okay? It was nothing meaningful at all. It was just more spending. And that's why Trump was against it. They want to say he was against it because he wanted to be the guy to save it. Well, I'm glad he was against it, and I'm glad Congress didn't pass it because it would have been another pork on top of all the other wasted money we have without solving the problem. And once the pork gets going, it doesn't stop, right? Once you put these laws in place and you start the spending, then you create a bureaucracy, you hire more government people, the government takes over more of the economy, and then you can't get rid of these people. At least when the private sector has to deal with it. And you don't like this. I know it made it bad, right? When things went bad, what happened? All the big tech companies, we had a massive layoff, right? And that doesn't help. But inflation was a factor. The COVID situation was a factor because a lot of the companies like Amazon, for example, were making ridiculously outsized profits. The pharma, a bunch of tech people that were able to still work because they didn't get kicked out because they were a mom and pop. And they became billionaires on top of billionaires. They doubled and tripled their net worth, and they hired like crazy. And then they had to get rid of all these people, and they did. Amazon, Google, all these people. They all cut a ton of people. And that hasn't helped the economy. So all of these things all were out of bad policy decisions. Most of them, not all of them, were on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's watch. They have to own that, okay? And yes, inflation is extremely high. And if you're in a low-income situation, you're really affected by it. It doesn't affect me and people like me. I get that, okay? And that's why I'm not advocating, oh, poor me because I can't pay for the food. No, I feel bad for the guys that work in my building, okay? And I feel bad for the guys that fix the plumbing and the electricians. I feel bad for people on low income, people on fixed income, that they're struggling. And it is real. It's not baloney. You just talk to anyone out there and they'll tell you it's bad and the prices are high. Now, what they're claiming, so let's go to the fact checking, right? So clearly Trump probably overstated the overall increase, but the increase has been real. So if every year it's up for the 3 years, you get 5%, 7%, 8%. That's over the last year. So in the aggregate, you got to have it's a compounding, right? So it went up over 5 years. It could, 4 years, it could be like 40%. Okay, and then to say, well, it's inflation is down, prices are down. No, the rate of increase is down. They're still going up. Now it's 3%. That means it's 3% over the 30, 40% already. So prices aren't coming down. No prices are coming down. They're just not going up as fast as they were. So how does that help poor people? They're already paying more than they could possibly afford, and now it's going to go up another 3%. It was okay when inflation was for years now. We had a great run of it where it was between 0 and 1%, actually almost negative for, I think, if you look at the charts, and I look at the charts a lot because it's important to know the numbers, not just throw stuff off the top of your head. We actually had one year we had a dip just below. We had like almost a deflation. And then it was relatively stable between 1% and 3% for quite some time, which is great. That's what the target is for the Fed. They like to keep it between 1% and 3%. They don't want it to go too low. Deflation could be as bad as inflation, but that's the target range that the Fed tries to keep. And they use interest rates, okay, and the money supply to try to regulate that. And they're supposed to be apolitical. And for the most part, I believe they are. They take a lot of heat from all the politicians when the politicians want to cut rates because it's, they want to make believe they're doing something for the economy. But fiscal policy, which is what the government does, and monetary policy, which is what the Fed does, are two different things. And monetary policy is usually the better, and again, you may have some economists tell you otherwise, that the monetary policy, because that is the main tool that we use to maintain price stability, keep inflation low, and to keep GDP growth so that it's at or above inflation. That's the goal, right? You want to have the growth of the economy to at least be above the inflation. So that means people are not adversely affected by pricing. So as prices go up, wages go up the same, and you're kind of the same. The closer you keep those together, the better off you are. And that's been the economic policy for years. Okay, and I will say this: I don't pick on the Fed. They have a tough job because they have to predict ahead, and these levers that they use, they don't happen overnight. And then they always have to try to figure out, okay, if I make the move this quarter, how many quarters before the effect is felt? And they're very smart economists. I give them a lot of credit. They're really serious people, and they do a good job, and I respect them. And I don't think the government should get involved politically trying to tell these very good people who've done a very good job for the most part throughout history, since the Fed's been around. And I know there's a lot of people, conspiracies about the Fed. I don't go there, okay? I'm an economics person myself. That's what I studied. And I'm a very big student of economics. I believe that economic policy done well, and the Federal Reserve's our best monetary policy, is our best tool to go there. Fiscal policy, as opposed to monetary policy, and you can go read this stuff, and you can attack me if you want to. You can go, you do some research, do it. Fiscal policy is different. Okay, it's when the government passes laws, right, to either increase spending, raise taxes. They have a lot of tools in their toolkit, right, to do things. And those things are what I would call lagging solutions. So it takes a long time when you pass the law, you put the money in, you don't see the effect of that day one. That's what happened with all that stimulus we put in around the beginning of the COVID, it didn't hit right away. Not only that, because the economy was shut down, but everyone that knows anything about economics knew that when that hit, it was going to be a tidal wave, and it was. And it's really bad. Now, can it be fixed? Yes. The Fed is already doing that. They've already raised rates. They're already reeling in the inflation. Things are going well. They will get it under control. And the best thing we can do is for Biden and Trump or Kamala or whoever's going to be, stay the heck out of it. Don't do anything. Stop spending and stop raising taxes for 2 years. Just put a moratorium on your stupid fiscal policy. Let the Fed deal with it on the monetary policy side, and we will be back to prosperity because Americans are good at getting back to prosperity. Our recessions are typically short. Our expansions are typically large. It's usually 8 years to 2 years. And, I've been through at least 4 or 5 of these cycles. We survive. There's a couple bad years, and then it gets back to where we need it to be. And the best thing the government could do is stay out. They never go the right way. They're too late, too little, too late, or too much, too early. They never get it right. They're the worst. So stop it. But it's political, right? So you want to throw money out there to get votes. You want to say you're doing something just to get votes. And you don't care about the people. Because if you did, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. And that's what gets me ticked off about politicians, because if they really cared, they wouldn't do it. And they do. So anyway, that's the whole thing on inflation. Inflation's bad. And it's really bad right now, and people are suffering. And whatever he said was true. And Biden and Kamala, they have to take responsibility for their part in it. It was a big part. So they have to own that. And they got to stop trying to blame Trump, and they got to stop trying to say he's overstating it and that inflation's great. It's coming down. The economy's growing. Look what I did to save the country. You did nothing, okay? Nothing. It was a disaster, okay? Now, Trump claimed it was the worst inflation in 100 years. No, it wasn't. There was a couple other ones, okay? But it's pretty darn bad, okay? It's pretty darn bad. It's as bad as it was, almost as bad as it was when like I said, in the 70s, early 80s, which was horrific, okay? But it's pretty darn bad. I haven't seen it since then. So it's at least 40 years. I guess the Times admitted that at least. It's been at least 40 years. So that's nothing to brag about if I'm the incumbent president and the now nominated for incumbent vice president, that they can be bragging about what a great job they did on the economy, because they've done a horrible job. And I don't want to get into this, but it's just annoying when I watch all these, all this misinformation. Okay, what else did he say? Then he talked about bacon being 4 times and whatever. But yeah, it's all up. Every bit of the food is up. Then he claimed falsely that his tax cut was the largest in history, and that's not true. I think Reagan did one that was much bigger, much better, by the way. I think even Clinton did one that was pretty good. He certainly did a tax cut. He did some good things. There was the corporate tax rate was lowered and some other things, but a lot of those benefits did not go to what I would call the high earners, not billionaire class, but the people who are making between $250,000 and $1 million or $2 million. That particular segment of the economy, you can call them rich, you can call them whatever you want to, but that's those are usually professionals. Those are people who are making a good living. A lot of them are making it as ordinary income. I'm a lawyer. I make ordinary income, so I don't have capital gains. I don't get any of that stuff. I have to pay every penny on that. I pay my effective tax rate in New York City is 62%. Okay, 62%. Say that again, 62%. So I don't want to hear about how much you're supposed to pay and pay. We pay plenty. I clearly know the billionaires don't pay as a percentage that much because they don't take as much ordinary income. They take it in capital gains, and I get it. They probably should pay more. But they're talking about there's 2,700 billionaires there, plus or minus in the world, and there's only 1,000 in the United States. So we're going to have our policy for taxes and all the other stuff based on what we're going to do to the 1,000 people that you can't touch anyway, and half of them are embedded already in the government and are like behind all the policies. They get the call up and decide to get Joe Biden out. They can do that. I mean, you're not going to get those guys. So let's not have our tax policy worried about those guys. Let's have our tax policy about the rest of the working people who pay 80% of the taxes. So the taxes did not go down for a lot of people. They went down for some of the lower income people, which I'm always fine with. I would want to reduce people under $50,000. I wish they didn't pay any taxes. I think that would be a great thing. If you made less than 50, you shouldn't pay any taxes, okay? And if you make 20 and you're working, you should get $30,000 tax credit, period. I'm all for that because people below $50,000 is barely able to live, and I don't care where in this country, okay? And therefore, I don't want them paying taxes. All right, so there's ways to fix our tax code. And by the way, there's been bipartisan panels. There's plenty. Go do the work it out. Look at this stuff. There's been bipartisan committees who have put together really, really thoughtful tax policies. But it won't happen because it's not politically expedient. It won't reduce the size of the IRS, which is a real nightmare. It won't get rid of the government bureaucracy around it. And it will get rid of, unfortunately, the ability to say tax the rich and this stuff and that. Because once you put a rational plan in place, there won't be able to have these conversations. We'll raise tax revenues effectively, and there will no longer be the argument of tax the rich, and that will take away almost all of the left's angle on this thing because they will no longer be able to use that as a political talking point. So I get that's why it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away because it can't. Absolutely can. Absolutely can. And we have really smart people who have done a lot of work on this stuff. And I said bipartisan. Go back and look. They've done multiple white papers on this where they come up with great tax policies. And they will really be good for people at the lowest income, which is the people that we need to care about. Okay? I don't care that I pay more than I should. I wish the money went to the people that deserve it. I would be very happy then. But 90% of that money gets wasted, siphoned off, and it gets put in, into the bureaucracy and in the pockets of people who have the contracts with the government and all that stuff. We all know where it goes, okay? Just like the money for Ukraine and the money for Israel, it went mostly to buy weapons back from us, okay? So where's the humanitarian aid? And Trump talked a little bit about that, and they bashed him on that too. But the fact of the matter is, it is a disaster what we did with this aid and the way the aid was just a round trip to get money back to buy more weapons. And that all happened, I have to say, it all happened on Biden and Kamala's watch. They were the ones that approved all that stuff, and they have to own it. They got to own it. It's what they did. And then the last thing, and I'm going to this one is probably the most annoying to me of all as a lawyer. They were claiming, and I saw a clip somewhere where somebody on CNN was, or NMS, I forget, whatever one of those mainstream medias, they were saying that that they keep showing the clip where Trump said he would hire an independent prosecutor, or I forget what they call him, whatever, probably an independent prosecutor, to investigate potential criminal acts by Biden. And I said, and then I said, well, okay, well, isn't that what Biden did to Trump? Why would he expect anything different? And by the way, we all know, and I don't want to get into this, but I actually have personal knowledge of some stuff that his son did, and it's obvious on its face that money was funneled through just a whole octopus of LLCs through the Biden family. They have identified the Congress. And why isn't this being talked about? Why hasn't there been a real investigation? If it was Trump, he would be impeached yet again for the same thing. I think Biden's family had over 100 and some odd SARs. You know what a SARs is? It's a suspicious activity report that banks are required to do when they see money coming in. Those are intended to prevent money laundering and terrorist activity. How does the Biden family have that many SARs? How do they even keep their bank accounts open? If you even had one, a bank normally would just close your account down. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here, worried about Trump coming after Biden. Now, I would say this. If I was Trump, I would not, because we got to stop this. Okay, we got to stop this politicizing of lawsuits against your opponents. Stop it. Okay, it's got to stop. Now, if a president, whether it's Biden or Trump, goes so far out of the box that they are so ridiculously greedy that they're going to commit some stupid crimes, and I think both Biden and potentially Trump, I haven't seen it on Trump yet. I've been looking at all of his cases. They don't really have good cases against Trump, even though he supposedly got convicted for 34 crimes. It was the same thing 34 times, okay? So cut it out with that, too. It's just the way you present these things to make it sound like it's more than it really is. And those statutes they used were totally inappropriately used. I can go through every case, and someday maybe I will. And I think on appeal, almost all of this stuff that came at Trump will be overturned. Even in some maybe not in New York, because that's the only state that, or California, if they don't think they have anything in California, because those cases are junk, absolute junk. And then I heard on almost every news outlet was saying stuff that Trump was a convicted or adjudicated rapist. Now, you can't make a more false statement, okay? He got his, what they went after him for was sexual abuse, not even sexual harassment, not sexual assault, not rape, sexual abuse, okay? And to suggest that he's a rapist, convicted, adjudicated, that was the word I heard numerous times by the news media. And who's calling them out on that? And frankly, in my mind, that is a defamation. And, except for he's the president, unfortunately, and no one will ever support him on that. Those people who said that knowingly, falsely, with the intent, they had malice, okay? You may have heard about that movie, Absence of Malice. The news reporters don't get to do something if they're doing it maliciously. They don't get the First Amendment rights that you normally have, and they absolutely did it with malice to attack Trump. And to me, that rises to the level of defamation, and they should have been, they should have been sued, and they should have been all found guilty. And frankly, if it was in any other situation than Trump, I think some of them would. And some people are being sued now, and Trump is suing some people, and I think even Elon Musk, and I think others. So there's going to be some suits out there, and some of these pundits are going to, they're going to wish they use the proper terms, but we'll see. So that's the deal on this ridiculous, Trump is this liar. He is certainly a liar at times. He is mostly an exaggerator, okay? But the underlying message that he's trying to pound home on many issues, immigration, energy, the wars, nuclear threat, and inflation, he's right. I'm sorry, he's right. And that's my view. You don't need to agree. Matter of fact, I know that half the people in the country are not going to agree. I'm going to get a lot of, nasty comments. Fine. That's my opinion. This is my opinion. I told you why I think that's the case. I laid out my reasons for that, and you can attack them, and that's fine. And by the way, I could change my mind because as new things come available to me, new facts, I don't stick to it because I have a religious reason to be in favor of one side or the other. I don't. I'm disgusted by both of them right now, to the point where I wish they would both quit and get a whole new, take a whole pause here and have a whole new primary with a whole new set of candidates on both sides who are real, honest, decent, and potentially a leader of America, so that we can restore our presence in the world and deal with the real issues, which are conflicts all over the place. I just read the other day, there's a massive civil war going on in Sudan, which is the third largest country in Africa, which is killing more people than all these other wars. And it never gets put on the news. No one cares. No one cares. So there's a lot of problems out there that we're not even talking about because we're spending too much time deciding whether the price of milk went from $2 to $4 or $5, and whether or not, Trump said that the sea is going to rise an eighth of an inch or whatever. These are so stupid things to be talking about. And the news media around the clock is on this stuff. Now, I was not going to do this, and I have to apologize to all of my viewers. I hope this is the last time you'll hear me rant on this. I'm going to get out of this political thing. It's just so disgusting. I tried to go into it with the point of view of doing like all my other topics, which is to just get to the facts and to present the facts. But I also realize if I do, it doesn't matter. People who want to believe what they're going to want to believe are going to take their position no matter what. They don't even care about the facts. No one cares about the facts. They want their story. They want their position. Facts are just an annoyance that get in the way. So why would I spend, an enormous amount of effort and time, which it takes a lot of effort and time. Jenna, she helps me, and we work really hard on this. I have a job. This is not my job. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this to help people that I think want to be helped. So I will shift back to what I was really trying to do, which is just to provide education and to provide information unbiased as best as it can be. Again, I tell you my biases up front, and trying to get the facts out on important issues. I'm going to be doing a whole series on the Great Society, which was the social programs that came out of 1964 under President Johnson. I'm going to compare what those programs were, how they've changed, and what have they actually accomplished. Because you can't talk about that. If you talk about it, you're some kind of racist, white supremacist, bigot, whatever. But I don't care. We need to know how well we've done with the amount of money we've spent. All well-intentioned, by the way. When you look at it, when we get into that, you'll see that those programs are all well-intentioned, but they're not doing the job. So in any event, we'll have more on this. I'm sorry about my tone. I really do apologize. I'll try to get myself under control. But yesterday and today and reading all this stuff and watching the news media, it sickens me. So I just can't even watch it. I just can't. And I this political season is going to be, probably the end of me. I don't know if I can take it, and I can't even talk to my friends who are on different side of the political aisle. They're absolutely watching CNN and MSNBC all day long. They're just spouting the same old, and they're completely without any basis in fact or reality. And I can see it, and they get so angry if you even try to point out that there might be a little bit of a problem with the facts. They get angry, really, really angry. And you're seeing it all over the place. People don't want to talk civilly to each other. They don't want to discuss it. And yet at the end of the day, if you really think about it, I think everybody wants the same thing. You want affordable food, housing, education, healthcare. Who doesn't want that? The issue is, how do we get there? And who's going to do a better job of getting there? And that's what we can have a discussion about. And when you have those discussions, you have to base it on facts that we know, because we've tried a lot of things. So we should say, okay, what programs work, which ones don't work? And the problem with that is, once a program gets in place in the government, you know this, it grows like a cancer. It gets getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the mission is not to help the intended people, it's to keep the program alive. And so we'll get into that. But we're going to get into it not trying to give you the left or right. I'm just going to throw out the facts as best I can, and then you can decide whether we're doing the right thing, the wrong thing, whether you think these policies are going to be better than the other policies. And I'll try to lay them all out there so you can look at them side by side. And hopefully that'll be helpful to people. But I hope this is my last one on this one. I'm not going to try to fact check this political campaign because it would be useless. People don't care if I got it right or not. And people are going to they're going to take their point of view whether they want to or not. So I'm going to try to go back and do what we started out to do, try to just bring some interesting topics. I'm going to stick with my, things that I know the most about, try to stay in my lane. I'm going to continue to support my military and first responders. That's my primary mission in life. They deserve it. They need it. And we're going to talk about the VA, and there's a lot of other topics we're going to cover to see how they're doing. I don't have my Guardian Revival shirt on today. I have my Harley shirt on because it may be the last time I wear it. You may be aware of Johann Zeitz, the CEO of Harley, who is some kind of anti-capitalist super Marxist now, who's basically super woke, he's ruining the Harley brand, and all of us Harley owners are up in arms because it's like one of the last American brands out there that is truly American, and people, whether you're military, whether you're first responders, I mean, it's like it's the brand for Americans, and we love it. And to see it go woke is a disaster. And so I hope that he gets fired. I don't know why they hired him, or he quits, or something happens, because I don't want to scrap my Harley. And I don't want to do a Kid Rock and shoot it up with a gun. I love my Harley, and that's why I'm wearing my shirt. Hopefully send a message out. If you guys wear, any of you folks out there love Harleys too, help me try to get this guy to come to his senses and leave the brand alone, and leave it to be the American brand that it is. We don't need somebody from Germany coming in here and screwing us up like Germany, okay? We're Americans. Let's keep it in America. So that's the other thing. The one thing I did forget, but you should see this, on top of the distributed denial of service, Elon Musk got a letter from this Terry Breton, who's the head of the European Commission, threatening him to basically throw him in jail for doing the Trump interview. Whatever happened to free speech? Whatever happened to free speech? Can you believe that they had the gall to come over here and try to tell our news media or Twitter or anyone here that we can't interview a presidential candidate and because he's going to say things that might be offensive or might upset someone, and then today, if you upset someone, that's hate speech and it's a crime. And like you look at what's happening over in the UK, they're actually coming to your house if they see that you don't like your tweets. It's a scary time out there, and if you think this is a good idea, wait to see what happens when they come for you. When the tide shifts and the other political party is in control and they now have the same tools that you wanted to shut them up, to shut you up and put you in jail, you're not going to like it. And for me, I say don't put anybody in jail. There's no such thing of speech, that can rise to the level of an assault. That is out of this world. And they try to talk about yelling fire in the theater. We know the Supreme Court cases, and we know what the difference is between speech that is harmful, literally harmful, and just speech that is offensive, okay? Offensive speech is protected, and you need to toughen up and take it. And, but again, it's not just fair because it's okay for you to use offensive speech. It's okay for people to say what they want to say about Trump, and they call J.D. Vance weird. But the minute that someone says something about your side, you got to go to jail. That's hate speech. You're causing me great harm. I'm offended. Well, stop, okay? Because that is going to end up in a situation where no one can speak, and that's exactly where it goes. That's the full next step to communism and Marxism. And if you want to go down that path, go read some history books and see how that works out for you. Not so great. So for all you people that don't bother to read history or don't have any clue about history, there's a lot of it out there. And by the way, most of the world, I think more than half of the world, or damn near it, maybe not by population, if you just take all the list of countries, go look it up. You can see how many of them are socialist or not, not democratic, not capitalist. Most of the world is not. And most of the world is in trouble. We're the best example of a great economy and a great country, and you want to destroy the one great thing that this world has at the moment because it has flaws, absolutely, because it's not perfect, absolutely, and it's getting worse because instead of working to make it better, we just want to blow it all up as if that's going to solve anything. And I really see that as a problem. I see it's something that's going to creep up and it's going to be a real problem, and I hope that when I start doing some of my other things, I hope I can reach out to some people to be more reasonable. Think about this a little bit more clearly. Look at the facts. Work to help each other. I don't hate anyone. I'm not against you. If you're left, right, I don't care what your affiliation is. I want you to be part of the system. Our society. I want you to be part of America. I think it's the greatest thing ever. I'm lucky, glad, blessed to be part of it. Thank God my parents immigrated over here after World War II from Italy. I can't think of a better place to grow up, a better chance that I had, and I never would have had that anywhere else. And you have this opportunity to do the same. And if you need help, get help. If you want help, there's help out there. Americans tend to stick together when we're not yelling at each other and telling each other that we are some kind of evil animal, okay? You get a lot more by being nice. You get a lot more by asking for help. You get a lot more by sharing common values and goals than you are by telling everyone you don't know anymore. You're just not smart. You're just whatever. That never works, okay? No one's going to respond well to that. So please, folks, I love you. Do well. God bless you. And look to God. He can help you. And try to get this country back where it belongs. Stop the lying. Stop the baloney. I wish the media, we should just shut it down because it's just zero help to anyone. And just let the politicians go on TV. Give them a full channel. They can talk all day long. One for Trump, one for Kamala. And let them just talk to the people. Unfiltered by anyone. Sort of what Elon did. He just let Trump go. And I was glad he did because I learned more about what he really thinks about some of these things that, and even though they were exaggerated, it was helpful. And I would love if Kamala would go on with Elon and do 2 hours and let her do the same thing. And I hope Elon asks her to do the same thing. Give her the same platform. Give her 2 hours unfettered. Say whatever she wants. I would love to hear it, by the way. I could maybe be convinced that she got some good ideas. Maybe. But I don't know them. So let's do that. So anyway, like, subscribe, hit the bell, share it, send me comments. Be nice. I'm sensitive. But I'm fine if you don't agree with me. You're entitled to not agree with me. I'm fine with that, and you have every right to, and I support your right to be disagree with whatever I'm saying. I will support you on that. I'll defend your right to disagree to the death. You can be assured of that. I will not try to shut you down unless you say things that are just harmful to the community. You can say whatever you want about me. I don't care. But please try to help. Send me stuff that's going to help. Okay, because I will take that stuff and I will work with it and try to do a better job on my next show. It'll be less of a rant, hopefully. And like I said, God bless. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next trip. Thank you.